Coming up on today's edition of the Art Business Morning Show, we are asking the question, what would your art business look like if you launched it today? Today. What are the things you would focus on? Specifically, what we would do, what Nick and I would do if we started an art business today, what you need to focus on, and perhaps even more important, what you can ignore. What you can ignore. Now, welcome to another edition of the Art Business Mornings, the show that will put you on the path to a six-figure a year plus art business. And Nick, I think this is a very interesting prompt, right? Like, what would you do? What would we do if we were starting? You and I are now, we're no longer marketers and business people. We are artists. We are starting an art business today. And what would we focus on, right? And I'd love to get some intro thoughts from you, but for me, I think going right off of the prompt, the most important part of this for me is what you can ignore. It's what you can ignore when you're just getting started. And I think as one other way to set the stage, you think this applies to people that are just getting started today that have never sold their art, and it does. But it also applies to somebody that's taking stock right now. You're taking stock, and maybe it's been year one or year two or year three of your art career, and you're looking back and you're saying, is this mapping to my expectations? Is this the business? Is this business growing to the size that I want it to? And I think it's a very interesting exercise. I think it's a topic we need covering. I think it's extremely relevant to everything that we're doing right now.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, just to underscore your last point, a lot of artists have an art business that might have been running for a year or 3 years or 5 years, but they never really have gotten good traction. And so they're basically still just a startup starting out. So these principles will apply. These principles that we're going to talk about here, because I know where I'm going to go with this. I know where I'm going to go with this. Okay. I'm going to drop you guys a lot of value. But everybody's going to get something out of this. So do you want to go ahead?
I think what you said, and we should say that this topic today has emerged out of some conversations for us internally, because we look at our customers' businesses and we're constantly evaluating and saying, how can we get them to success quicker? Okay. And when you ask that question in an open-ended fashion, a lot of it goes to, well, what are they working on now? Is it effective? Are they doing it consistently? Is it getting results? Is it putting the cart before the horse? And I think that internal reflection on our part for you guys and where your businesses can be is such an important exercise. It's such a valuable exercise. And so we will likely go into some tactical on this episode, but really the theoretical is the most important. The theoretical aspect of it is the most important. And I think you need to constantly be on a footing. Constantly on a footing. Is this growing my business? Is this getting me the feedback that I need? And if it's not, why are you working on it? Why are you working on it? And yet, what does everyone work on? All of the things that is not getting them to sales, that is not getting them the feedback and the validation that they need. So I thought we would keep it open-ended. I think one of the joys for me in these sessions are putting the hot button topics of the day that are important up on the table, and then just fleshing them out as we go along, right?
Yeah.
Fleshing them out as we talk. So I'm happy to go list item by list item. If you want to, maybe it might be fun to start, like, you're starting your art business right now today, okay? From scratch, or you've been at it for 3 years and you're reassessing. Where do you start? Where do you begin? You want to do that, and I can do that if you like.
Yeah, I'll let me give you my
Thesis.
overview on that. Yeah. Because I've got and I think we should say too, because I think it's important to say, like, for you and for me, like, we always talk about, who are you listening to? Who are you getting information from, right? Guys, I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. I've started 5 companies. I've actually started more ideas, pivots, right? I think that's important to talk about, but 5 actual companies that I've started, right? And then, of course, at Art Storefronts for the last, what is it now, 8 years, 7 years. We've got over 6,500, I think, members now that are individual artists and photographers, entrepreneurs running their business from home. and obviously we're deep with all of them, advising them and helping them build their businesses, right? And
Yep.
so going back to this, to my thesis, that I've learned over a 25-year period essentially now, right, is like I think that there are three buckets that everybody kind of fits into. Okay. And I'm not just talking about an artist or a photographer business. I'm literally talking about any sort of a startup or entrepreneurial business. Okay. And
Okay.
so it's bucket one is, are you literally starting from scratch right now? 0 followers, 0 email address. You got nothing. You have literally 0. Okay. That's like it's like you're starting a business. There's 3 branches, right? You're gonna fall into one of these. Okay. That's the first one. The second one is you've got like friends and family following you. You've been posting a little bit here and there, like, but you don't have any business. You haven't really tried to sell much, if at all, but you do have like a social presence of like people you've worked with are following you. And it's really just friends and family, right? But you've got something there. You're not like literally opening up your Instagram account and Facebook account for the first time today, right? Two different things, okay? And you might have a little bit of sales in there too, okay? And then there's the third bucket, which is you have an existing business, right? And you've got, let's say, you've got traction. You've got, call it $10, $20, $30,000 a year at least, okay? Because there's a big difference between selling like $500 or $1,000 a year and selling like, if you're walking into me saying, I've sold like 10 grand last year, right? Because if you sold 10 grand last year, I'm putting you on a different path. So all 3 of those buckets have different paths and things that they should do, so I'll pause right there and kick it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, you stated it another way, like 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, right? Like, the 0 to 1 problem, that's like kind of like a moniker and a buzzword, is like when you are literally starting out from scratch and you don't have a single solitary thing figured out. And then bucket 2 is like, side hustle, ready to try to get something into a consistent side hustle, right? Another buzzword, but I kind of like the side hustle concept. And then number 3 is like, you need to take the business seriously. And the business needs to start growing. And you might be in a situation where you don't feel like you're getting the ROI from the time, energy, talent, treasure that you're pushing into it. And there could be a little bit of a disconnect there. And then I think those 3 buckets are incredibly important. I think what you focus on in those 3 buckets are incredibly important. I think underpinning all of them, and I think this is like as poignant a reminder for us as it is for anyone else. What is the quickest way you can get the answer to the question, right? It's always, what is the quickest way you can get the answer to the question? And that sounds vague and nebulous. And so let me give it some teeth, right? You're just started. You've never sold a piece of art before in your entire life. What is the quickest way you can sell a piece of art? If there's anything that gets in the way that prevents you from selling the piece of art, why are you working on it? Okay.
Exactly.
And let me give, for instance, I'll just get started when I get my logo done. You don't need a logo, sell a piece of art. I'll just get started when I get my bank account started. You don't need a bank account to sell your first piece of art. I'll just get started when I figure out what my niche is. You don't need a damn niche to sell your first piece of art, right? And so it's as poignant as that starting phase as it is at the phase at the very end. Let's say you're at that $25,000 a year phase and you're like, this is going okay, but it's not mapping to my expectations. And you need to try some new subject material because your audience is not big enough. And so the question you need to be asking yourself is, how quickly can I try some new subject material? And what will happen is same nonsense. I have to figure out my shipping, Nick. I have to figure out my shipping, and then I'll be able to try this new pivot, right? I just need to get my website updated, and then I need to try this new pivot. I need to work out my pricing and figure out what materials are going to look best, and then I'll get going, right? And it's all nonsense. It's all this nonsense that gets in the way from you getting to the actual goal and getting to what you need to do. And so I think we can talk about some of that stuff broadly, but again, as an overall mindset, it doesn't ever change. That's why this is so relevant. The overall mindset does not ever change, regardless of what bucket you're in. You have to get these other things out of the way that get you on target to the goal as quickly as possible.
And the key thing is that, you can only appreciate this if you've actually done it and wasted your time. But when we start a business, our assumptions are pretty much always wrong. Okay. Like, you think your customer's problem is a certain thing and it's not, right? And you only learn when you actually try to sell the product. Okay. And so you might think, hey, I'm going to launch my business with this this specific subject matter, this niche. And then you go and you build a website, you go and you do all of these different things, and you spend a ton of time only to learn that nobody cares about that niche, or the market size is like this tiny, right?
Yep.
And you have to keep pivoting. And so the point is, and this is a really, really important point, is you got to move all the garbage out of the way and just go make some sales. That's it.
Yes.
You don't need a logo. You don't need a business license. You don't need to charge sales tax. You eventually will need to do all of these things. But up front, selling 10 or 20 pieces, none of that stuff matters. The government doesn't care. You're just testing it out, right? So all of that stuff is out of the way. Yes. And all you have to do is try to sell some of your product. Okay. And when I say that, you notice how I don't just say art. I don't say that because I don't want you thinking just an art print, like a canvas print or a metal print. If you can sell a calendar, merchandise items, those are arguably more important up front, because they're impulse items and people can buy lower price points. People can buy them right now. Whereas we all know an art decision has way higher friction. You might need like the person who's looking to buy it might need an approval from a spouse. First of all, you need open wall space. You might not have, most people don't have any. There's just a whole different, element to that. But the merchandise items they can buy right now, a set of coasters for $40 or $50, right? And the whole point of this is to get validation of your product that you are selling. Your product is your artistic image, whether it's a photograph or a painting, on some sort of medium. Call it paper, canvas, metal, or a calendar, coaster, puzzle, yoga mat,
pillow,
mug,
whatever,
t-shirt, sweatshirt, whatever it is, right? And you don't have to offer all of those. You can offer what you want, but that's the first thing that you need to do, right? And so going back to the three buckets, right? The person who is starting from scratch, and the people who have, like a family friend following, the person starting from scratch needs to get to that level where they have some sort of a basic following, right? There's a little hurdle right there, a little hump. So that's the first thing that they've got to do, and so they might have to do some lead generation tactics, or, get all of their friends and family's emails and work people, whatever it is, right? But they got to get from 0 to 1 on some sort of an audience. And then they need to, and it doesn't need to be big at all. And then they need to start offering, doing some flash sales online, right? On the social media platform, okay? And through email, and just try to sell some stuff. That's it. And what we have found, guys, this is where you're like, well, is there an exact way I do it or not do it? Just tell people what your regular price would be, when you're going to launch this business. Hey, I'm thinking about launching this business, or I'm thinking about launching these images, or art, or whatever it is. And then, here's what my prices are going to be. But right now, while I'm validating and testing this out for all you guys, because I love you so much, and you're my first friends and, fans or whatever, you're going to get this price, this special discounted price. But I'm only offering 3 of them, and they're going today, or something like that. There's a lot of tactical with that. And we have a validation playbook, guys, at Art Storefronts. It's on our blog. We should drop that in the comments or something like that. But you can search for it. It's called the validation playbook, where we kind of walk you through exactly how to do that. But you do that, okay, because you need to see whether, your stuff is going to sell. All right. And that's going to test your images, whether your actual images are resonating and they're going to sell, or if nothing sells, it's possible that your existing audience, isn't the right people who are going to buy that. But you don't spend long on either of that, right? Like, if if your audience doesn't buy anything, if all your friends and family, work colleagues, any of that stuff, doesn't actually buy anything, there's already a big problem right there. There's already a big problem. So you have to validate that a little bit further. But then at that point, you have to start wondering, like, is it my images? Is it my images? Do I need to pivot to a different subject matter with my photography or my art? And you just do that quickly. You don't make a big deal about it. It's not like, oh, I need to go like travel the world and go get 100 images of this, desert, right? It's like, no, you just need to focus on something that's local to you, that will resonate with people, that where, that has a bigger market size than whatever it is that you were trying to offer in the first place, and then try to sell that. And then you basically rinse and repeat on this until you get traction. Yeah. That's what you do. You have to stay there until you get traction. And what happens, Pat, is a lot of artists, and photographers, what they do is they paint what they want or they shoot what they want, right?
Yep.
Which I get it.
Yep.
You're an artist, like I used to take, music very seriously, and I wrote a bunch of songs, and like I only wrote like what felt good for me, right? That didn't mean anything at the end of the day, right? I get it. Like that there's a creative outlet that an artist has to do with that. So you can continue doing that, but it doesn't mean that has to be the core of your business. That could be a side part of your business. Here's my passion projects. But then there's the marketable stuff where you're like, I'm trying to make a business out of this. I want to sell this stuff because this is what I want to do for a living, or I want to make at least some decent side income out of all of this. And so if you're operating within that reality, then this is the way you want to be thinking, right? You need to be iterating and validating the content that you're selling and the product that you're selling. Okay. The product is what media type is it being delivered on, right? But the content is your artistic image. And if you want to build a better business, a bigger business over time, you're going to need to be pivoting, or I should say, I like the word evolving better, right? Like evolving as an artist or a photographer evolving towards more marketable content, more marketable subject matter. Because what that means is you're taking your market size and you're expanding it, okay, with each evolution. And as you expand your potential market size, your business, the ceiling on the amount of revenue your business can do is getting higher and higher and higher. So if you start off painting like rocks in a lake and they're beautiful, but they're just rocks in a lake, it's like, how many people will that resonate with? And then if you start painting, Disneyland, for example, where it's like, boom, like the market size is massive. Everybody knows what that is. People are passionate about it. If you get in on that type of an angle, all of a sudden your ceiling just went dramatically higher, right? So I'm just using that as a general example, but it's important to understand because so many artists and photographers that we know are operating with this tiny niche, right? And they're just pushing hard on the marketing on it. And yes, you need to do that because you want to test it. You're not totally sure whether that niche has like a big ceiling. But if you're pushing it and it's really hard, you're probably butting up against that ceiling. If people don't want to create partnerships with you and you're, things are not resonating, then you should be testing other stuff. And let's face it, it's not hard. Like this is one of the biggest advantages of a photographer or an artist. You guys are the inventors. Normally people like me, when I start a business and I have to like create a piece of software or a widget of, some sort, like, you have to invent like some sort of a device. Like we can't just keep inventing devices every day, Pat, or every week. It's expensive. Like it's very hard to do, but an artist can invent new stuff every day or every week. You just paint something new, or you go and you shoot something new and you give it a shot. And that's the mentality that you want to have. You need to know that going in, the content that you start with is not going to be like 99.99% of the time is not going to be the content that you build a 100K art business with.
If I asked you, Nick, two questions, right? Two questions. And the first one would be, what's your favorite type of food?
My favorite type of food?
Yeah.
Probably Italian.
Okay, Italian. How do you know?
How do I know? I order it a lot. I think about it and order it a lot.
Yeah, but really the reason is because you've tried a whole bunch of different foods,
mm-hmm.
right? and one just resonated with you, right? And I see this question on Facebook from Hans, and he's saying, how much time is adequate for sampling testing? Is my subject matter resonating? That's a fantastic question. It's an amazing question. I sat there, was thinking about it as Nick was talking. And number one, I brought up the restaurant analogy is because a lot of you guys are just eating at the same damn restaurant every single solitary time, right? And the restaurant that you're eating at is, this is what creatively inspires me. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to attempt to sell. And you just keep eating at that restaurant and eating at that restaurant and eating at that restaurant, and you don't ever try anything else, right? And you have to try all of these various different restaurants so that you can arrive at which one is your favorite, okay? In Nick's case, Italian food. And the various different subject matters that you try are you eating at those various different restaurants. And what ends up happening, Hans, it's the easiest way to answer Hans' question is like, how much time is adequate for sample and testing? Is my significant matter resonating? How do you know you've met the love of your life? When you know, right? When you know. How did Nick know that the Italian food was better than everything else when his taste buds were screaming at him, this is it, right? And so a lot of people just get stuck on this track of, this is what I create. I am going to go and sell this. If it doesn't get the results that I want, they're going to make up a bunch of excuses. Art doesn't sell. We're in a recession. Self-blame, self-doubt. I'm not talented. When you just haven't tried enough restaurants to know. Okay, you have not tried enough restaurants to know. And I see this time and time and time again. And we started this conversation about focus, right? You need to get everything out of the way, all the garbage out of the way, aside from getting in the car and driving to all the different restaurants in town, right? And once you tried all of those different ones, one is going to jump out at you more so than the others. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, this is working. This is working at a level that I can't even begin to understand or believe. And, one of the biggest fallacies of this business is the utter, total, and complete paucity, the utter, total, and lack of information out there about this process. Okay. Everyone talks about the masters and talks about how well they've done and their incredible styles and their incredible niches and the historical aspects of it and what era they were in and dying penniless and all of those stories. Where are the stories? Okay. Like this Picasso one that I constantly cite, that he had 45,000 pieces of unsold work in his inventory when he died. What the hell do you think he was doing? He was trying every restaurant, not just in his town, but he was trying every restaurant in the entire country and in others. And that is how he found out, okay, what his favorite meal was, right? And what his favorite meal was for a series. And so the fallacy is that somehow making it as an artist, okay, you create what you want and hope it all works. And you don't ever try any new styles, and you don't ever try any new ideas, and you don't ever try any new directions, right? Like that is just an absolute fallacy. It is absolute nonsense. And I think to give it some teeth, Hans, to try to give it a little bit more color, if you're not selling anything or you're trying all year and you sold 2 or 3 pieces, it's not working, right? It's not working. You and I can talk about some tactical things. Having more than just originals, having open editions, limited editions, originals, having low price points to high price points, having merchandise and other images, other products that your images are on to see whether or not it can buy, right? We can talk about that tactical stuff. But if you've been at it and the sales are not, and please don't BS me or Nick or anyone else, or most importantly, don't BS yourself. If you've been at it, you've actually attempted to sell. You actually attempted to market the work. You have tried to sell. Okay. Don't tell me that I've tried to sell it. I see nothing on your socials. You've never sent any emails. You haven't done a live show. You haven't done an in-person craft show or fair. Then you haven't really tried. Okay. Then you don't know. But if you tried, and I mean, what would you say? Like in our situation, we would probably go on a month cadence just to throw it out. I would create a style. I would commit to 10 different venues, avenues, ways that I would attempt to sell it. If it didn't sell, I would go on to the next style the next month. Hammer the one the next month. Hammer the one the next month. I would not wait a year. And a lot of people do wait a year. A lot of people wait 5 years.
Pat, I'd go even faster. I would go
faster.
even. Yes, I would. And you know what I would say is like, you see some of these comments that we're getting like, wait, so you don't need a niche? I'm going to say no. Because no, you do not need a
absolute
niche.
no.
Everyone who
Absolute no.
told you like, oh, you're going to start a business. Okay, I got to go photograph like everything in this theme of like close-ups on flowers, or I need to go paint that. Everyone who told you that was completely wrong. Okay, completely wrong. You don't need a niche. What you need is something that will actually sell if you want to have a business. That's what you need. That's what you need. You just need to get to that. Getting a niche, it's like a abstract way of looking at the business. Like, oh, when I look at somebody like Gray Malin or Peter Lick, right? These are photographers, but like big business photographers, right? They see the end game, Pat, where he has this niche, or they have their niches established, but it's because that's where they got. That wasn't how they started, right? And so that's a very important point. And so when I say I would go faster, to the person who's starting out or to the person who's struggling, I would say, on a piece of paper, go spend 30 minutes or an hour with your coffee, okay, today or tomorrow, in some peace and quiet, and I want you to go think of the 5 to 10 possible subject matters that you can paint, and be specific. Like if it's a person you can paint, then write that person's name down. It's a famous person, whether it's a political figure or an athlete or a historical figure. I don't care what it is, right? Write down the specific thing, okay? And I want you to look at these on your paper, and I want you to go, there's a lot of people who know about this subject matter. They know this person, they like this person, or they dislike them, but whether it's like, you go down the list, like these are topics or these are items, that people are highly passionate about. Okay. And then what I would do is plan on painting or shooting them, figuring that out, right? Whichever ones are the easiest for you to do. I realize that some of them, if you're a photographer, it might be like, you might live in like Texas and you're thinking about the Golden Gate Bridge or something like that. You're like, I got to travel there. I got to spend money. Forget that one. Do something local to you that you can drive to keep your costs low. But use the same philosophy, right? There's famous landmarks and things like that are near you. And take those, and let's just say you've got 5, okay? Like you boil it down to 5 that you can do. I want you to do 1 a week if you can, right? Or as fast as you can. Depending on how long it takes you to do these things. But launch, sell it, do the validation playbook, and try to sell the item, right? A piece of art and a piece of merchandise. You got to have the merchandise in there for the impulse, right? Because if your audience is really small, then it might be small enough to where it just happens that none of them really need any art, right? And so you want to validate that by at least having a couple of merchandise items like coasters, such an easy one that everyone can buy, or a calendar or something like that, right? And you go through all 5 of these, and then you see where you're at. Now you have a basis to judge, right? Now you're going to get 2 conclusions from this, 2 major conclusions out of this. Number 1 is now you've got a diverse array of subject matter that's popular that you've thrown at your audience. What sold? What resonated? You will see that people are commenting, buying, reacting, whatever it is, differently on all of those. You're going to see that there's a leaderboard. One piece did better than all of them, and one of them might even be an outlier, right? Yep. The second thing is, if you really have a bunch of popular pieces there that like popular subject matter, I mean, as popular as they can get, and nobody bought anything, then you actually get to see whether the audience that you have, might not be big enough or is not buying anything, but something, and you may need to resolve that and try to get it to be a little bit bigger, and then essentially do a similar thing again, right? But those are 2 big things, because you need to get to the bottom of whether your product is good enough, whether your art is good enough. You have to. And if nobody's buying the most popular stuff that you've got, then there's a problem. There's a problem. Potentially potentially, I hate to say it, potentially your art your talents might not be good enough, or there's something not resonating or something wrong. But the other alternative is that your audience is not big enough. But we know at Art Storefronts that people who launch with friends and family as their following, and they start following our marketing, Pat, they usually like get results like right away, with our tactics. Like they start seeing their email list growing, they make a couple of sales, they get some early feedback that like, okay, I've got something here. I made a couple of sales. This is great, right? Like now I need to take it to the next level, and they still need to pivot and do the subject matter thing that I'm talking about. But if you can't get to that point, right, where your basic audience is not buying the most popular things that you can come up with, then you've got a problem. You maybe the way you thought about the popular things wasn't good enough. So maybe just look at that again and go even more specific. And when I say this, I want to be very clear. People paint Kobe Bryant. Okay. Like you're not going to get in a lawsuit for that. Okay. They're not going to come after you for something like that. People are painting, like highly recognizable figures of people, like what, and they're going down the gamut on that, right? And I can get into the licensing and how that works like later on down the line, but early on it doesn't matter, No. Like you can get that value, like you can get that specific and that popular, like or in terms of subject matter. And so if you're not that specific, get that specific, right? And get as specific as possible, because if you literally have like, and I'm gonna, you never want to touch the political things, but I'm going to make a point. If you've got the Donald Trump and the Joe Biden, and you've got the most popular political figures on both sides, and none of them are selling, right? Or the top athletes and the top musicians and celebrities and the top locations and all that, and you've ran through that and none of that is selling, then you've got a real problem, because that stuff is, resonates in some way with pretty much everybody that is following you or on your email list, regardless of how small.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
To circle back, Nick and I disagree perhaps on the timing of how many different restaurants we would go and eat at. Nick's going to eat out every night of the week until he finds the best restaurant, right? To use my earlier analogy. But tactically speaking, we live in an age, and we see this with our customers, where it feels like the majority of the art selling is digital these days, right? It's online through the various different venues. It's online through, yes, your website, yes, your social media sites, yes, going live. But I still love the old school face-to-face, okay? I still think it's the most effective way to do it. And, as I'm thinking through these various different niches and what I'm doing, and, again, I'm going to the very end here, Patrick, the sales are not mapping to my expectations. And I say, okay, great. Are you doing any in-person events? Yeah, I am. At the in-person events, do not let somebody walk away, okay, without saying, are you interested in any of these pieces? Yeah, your work's great. I really like them. Oh, well, which one do you like? This one's probably my favorite. Okay, well, I'm selling that one for $350. And they're like, okay, I'll let you know if I'm interested. Don't let that person walk away, okay? Say, you know what? I really got to move it. What do you think it's worth? What would you offer for it? And then shut up. Don't say anything. What would you offer for it? And to be honest with you, if they give you anything close to cost, sell it and move it on. Sell it and move it on. Because the takeaway, and again, I quote Picasso, early on, my drawings did not command high prices, but they all moved. Your art must get out into the world. That is a great initial bench point, right? Like if you're showing your work somewhere, or somebody comes up and tells you, this one's my favorite. You ever heard this one? Wow, you should really try and sell some of that stuff. It is so beautiful. Actually, this one's for sale right here, Nick. I would normally sell something like this for $500, but because I'm just trying to get started, I'll sell it for $250. Are you interested? No? What would you buy it at? Okay? If people are not taking the work and have zero desire, you're likely not on the right track. Okay? And if you're in those scenarios where people are not even offering you low ball, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, what about this? You're probably not on the right track. Okay. And even if you are not on the right track, you got to ask yourself, is the track I'm on ever going to map to my revenue expectations? And that's reason number 975 why you have to be trying these new styles, okay? Why you have to be trying these new ideas, right? And I go back to the restaurant analogy, right? Like the more restaurants you visit, the quicker you're going to find out what your favorite type of food is, right? So it is 100% a numbers game. And just to get crazy creative, like, I could go onto the dailymail.com. It's one of the most popular websites in the world. And I could grab the pop culture icon du jour of the day and create something in my style about them. And I'm a painter, and there I go. That's something I'm trying. If I'm a photographer, I could do whatever the hot button issue in my town is and go give it a shot, right?
Yep.
Like there's so many different ways that you can get creative with it. And it really just comes down to how many arrows you fire. And I go back to where we started this whole thing. This advice is as relevant for the person that has never sold a single solitary piece as it is for the person that's already at $500,000 a year in sales. And it just is, because you're one arrow fired away from discovering some incredible new direction, right? Some incredible new direction that no one had seen before, no one had taken into account, right? Like, you're flying a drone, right? And you take these wonderful drone shots that are like everyone else does. And then the boat parade comes around during Christmas, and you have the best shots of boats going through the harbor, decorated in Christmas lights. Turns out that is a hot button item. Everybody loves contemplating Christmas. And the next thing you know, Nick, I set up a little booth and I sold 65 photo books, because this is something that just is an awesome Christmas decoration. And I've got requests for custom photography of my boat. It's like, the point is that taking these different shots, okay, attempting to get them to market, that entire cycle is the lifeblood. It is how you discover new things. Okay. It is how you discover the next home run. And it's no different for marketing than it is for art, right? You got to be trying these things.
Yeah. And it's, another way of saying it too is like, does your business feel like it's a tugboat or a smooth sailor? Right.
Mhm.
And as you are trying these different subject matters that might be more popular, you will notice that maybe it still feels a little tugboaty, but it feels a little less tugboaty, right? It's a little bit smoother of a sailor than the previous content you had. And you'll be like, I can't believe it. Like, I just painted Kobe Bryant, right? Or something like that. And I'm just going to use that as an example, right? And then, my goodness, I thought Facebook and Instagram marketing didn't work. Well, now I'm seeing all of these comments and this stuff, and I made 3 sales, and it's like, wow, my problem was my content, right? That's what my problem was. And so that's where my point is, like, if you start off doing 5 of those in your first 5 weeks, eventually you've got to go deep on one of them, or deeper, right? And so you start with 5, and then whichever one is the best one, maybe you end up with 2, that like kind of both win. It doesn't matter. But then you're going to want to take those 2 and then probably go and make another 5 within the segment of those 2, 1 or 2, and then see, does it continue? Does the success continue? Or did you get a false positive in some way? If you had a false positive, then you kind of take a step back and look at like, oh, what is actually the right move? But you basically repeat that process, Pat, over and over and over again until you eventually get to a point where, it just becomes smoother and smoother of a sailor, and you're getting your email list is building through regular marketing, and the tactics, and you're making more and more sales. And so as you go, like, those decisions might get you to $5,000 a year in sales. They might get you to $100,000, right? But if they only get you to 5, you have to keep going, you guys, to get to 100, to get to 500, to get to $1 million. It's not going to stop. And so this notion that is out there that, you start your art business and you need to have a niche and you need to have, 50 images or 100 images is so wrong. Like, you're so much better off just starting with 1 and validating and seeing if it works, because you just wasted all of your time for all of the other images when you don't even know if they're going to sell. And they're probably not going to sell. I just want you to know that. I know the odds on my side. Pat, you do too, right? We
Yep.
know the odds because we deal with so many artists and photographers who we're talking to every single day, whether they're customers or not customers of art storefronts, and the odds are your first niche is not going to work, or it's going to work on a smaller level. It may not work at all. It may work on a smaller level, but you're going to need to do this anyway. And so, like, this is the information that everybody needs to know and needs to start with, right, in their minds, rather than the opposite, which is a path towards failure, right, and frustration and this tugboat feeling where it's like, God, it just never works. I'm just tugging this boat, this whole time. And it's like, all you got to do is actually pivot and evolve towards much more marketable content than you're currently offering.
Yep. And again, my restaurant analogy works so well, right? Because are you ever going to stop trying new restaurants?
No.
No, me either. Because I'm always looking for the next greatest one, right? Like,
Yes.
I love ramen. Okay. I love ramen. My wife and I went to Tokyo, and there's like literally websites that like classify all the various different ramen places. And in Tokyo alone, there's like 5,000 that you could go to. It's ridiculous, right? I went to a good 6 or 7 when I was there. I gotta find the next one. I gotta constantly try. I gotta constantly reinvent and see what happens. And I think when you have that mindset, when you have that mindset for the rest of your artistic career, it gives you the permission to take these experimentations. Number one, which is important, but number two, to fail miserably with them. To fail miserably with some of them, because that's just how it's going to go.
Yeah.
Just like the restaurants, you're going to go to some restaurants where it's like, thanks for the meal, I won't be back. Okay, and that's okay. That's how it works. That's the ball game. You have to try the new restaurants, right? You have to try the new styles, and it doesn't matter what size your business is. It just doesn't, right? I feel like I feel like part of what we do is conceptual and part of what we do is tactical, and both parts are so equally important. You see the comments that we're getting here, and it's like already this is opening people's minds to contemplate. It's like you need to have the permission to do this. You need someone to tell you that this is normal, that the best artists in the history of the world all did this. They just never talked about it, right? They figured out on their own that this is something that they need to do. They need to be constantly testing, trying to find something better, trying to level yourself up. And man, it doesn't mean you have to disrupt your current business. It doesn't mean you can't sell the stuff that you've created and you're passionate about. It just means you're always looking for that next opportunity. You're always looking for the next hit, right? You're always trying something new to reach a new level. And so few people do it. So few people get dug in and they say, like, look, I'm going to make this restaurant work come hell or high water. And they just keep going to the same restaurant, the same restaurant, the same restaurant, the same restaurant. It's like, you don't have to do that. You can go to a different restaurant. It's okay, right? It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
what drives me crazy, and you guys don't know this, but I'm going to tell you right now: the people who are evolving and pivoting the most are the most successful people that we know. All of like the artists and photographers at art storefronts that are selling 100K plus a year are doing pivots and evolutions faster than the people who are selling at the lowest levels, right?
Yep.
And it's like, why do you think you're selling at the lowest levels? You're not like them. You're not doing the things that they're doing, which is what we're talking about right now. They're evolving faster. And it's like, you see them with $100,000 a year business or higher. Okay, Pat, and they're evolving. They're pivoting, like all of their old stuff is still on their website. But, and I'll give a perfect example right now. Our longtime Art Storefronts member, shout out to Bill Stidham. This one's just right on my mind because he's literally doing it right now as we speak. He painted. So he normally paints, like, he had his regular artwork and he's got a couple of different genres that he was doing. Then he just, he was listening to us about all of the pivoting and all of that. He painted his version of Jesus, right? Boom, it exploded. You want to talk about the smooth sailor versus tugboat? He was texting me like, I've never had a response like this ever in my life. This is big. Like, and this is a guy who sells $100,000 a year, right?
Yep.
And so he's already like, oh my goodness, this is a bigger niche than I currently have. And so that doesn't mean he stops his other niche, but what did he do next? Go scroll to the very top. Yeah. So you can see here, the very top one was the Virgin Mary, right? It was on your screen a second ago on Facebook Live. And he painted that one. Instantly, sales coming through. Then, like literally, was it yesterday or the day before? He painted a Saint Michael the Archangel. You know what I mean? And it's right there on Facebook. You can see it's the second one over. And boom, sales coming through. Big sales.
By the way,
like high value order sizes. You know?
Did he have the permission to do this? Do you realize what a drastic departure this is from what he normally does? I could argue the risks of what he's doing here so strong. I mean, you have nothing but top culture icons and rock stars on his site, and all of a sudden you're going religious. Oh my gosh, it's so scary. What might happen? Guess what? He'll never know unless he gives it a shot and finds out, right?
And he just did it. And he took that shot. He fired that first arrow, you know, and it obviously resonated with him as a person. So it was something that still resonated with him. He felt like, I'm going to paint that, and he did it. And he might have been worried about it or whatever, because he's got a real audience and a real business, but he did it anyway. And boom, look what happened, right? And so now what is he doing? He's doing exactly what I said. He's going deeper on it, right?
Yep.
So you find something that works, you know, or works better than what you were doing. It's a smoother sailor. Then you go deeper on it, and you test the theory. Like, wait, maybe I could sell religious art to my same audience. You know, it just so happens that's the case. We don't know why, but he found that, and he's going deeper on it. The same thing might not work for you, but you take the shots and you find your own thing. And then what is he going to do with that, Pat? He's going to now get to his $200,000 a year business, right? Because his existing business and his existing content, and he was pushing it hard, was getting him to about 100,000 plus or minus 20% or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But everybody hits a wall at a certain point with that. You know, if you really are doing all the marketing, more often than not, we see people are not. Like they're doing like half the marketing or 20%. So the first things first is like, first things first is like do all the marketing to like squeeze that orange as much as you can, you know? But then also, if you're inspired, do your pivots, right? Test out experiment with new content, because that's how you're gonna see how to make your business a smoother sailor.
Turns out Christians also like music too. Yeah. Catholics also like music too, right? But you know, where does this information exist?
Nowhere.
They're not teaching this information in art school, right? They're not teaching you this in college, right? You know, maybe if you could even find a class at a university, an art marketing class, it's like one of the things that I get the most excited about week in, week out is when someone comes on one of my workshops. I run these workshops, art business workshops, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, shameless plug. And somebody comes in their 20s or their young 30s, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, I can get my hooks into you right now and start establishing some of these benchmark principles that will forever change the arc of your career, because it's about how quick these different styles that you can do. And there's so many different tangents, you know. I looked at another longtime customer and friend, Matthew Locke, and I saw on his Instagram, you know, this is a guy that paints and does like huge impasta. The paints take like forever to dry. Like the stuff comes off the canvas like inches, crazy stuff. And he's like, I pulled out the sketchbook again, right? And he started doing a bunch of sketches. And the guy is just so damn artistically talented that even the sketches, I was like, sketches. And I was like, dude, my God, I would buy 3 or 4 of those just to put in my bathroom as bathroom art, right? So the point is like the creative pivots do not even necessarily just need to be subject matter driven. It can be medium driven, right?
For sure.
It can be medium driven and completely change the game. So, you know, there's just so many different ways to do it. And the beautiful thing, okay, about this particular audience, they're creative.
Yeah. And
just saying. Do
you know another part about this that needs to be said is like doing this for your audience is entertaining for them. It's exciting. How boring is it to be sending the same stuff all the time? When you're doing new stuff, you know, and you're keeping with the times and it's entertaining, you know, and it's worth being on your email list to see what you're going to drop next, because you're clearly thinking about it. You're not like, just being like a static artist and sending the same stuff. It's actually exciting to see what you're going to do and to follow you on social media. It's like, wow, that's where he or she decided to go. Wow, that's awesome. That, like, they normally paint this,
Yeah, I want to show you something because it's interesting. So, Instagram. I'm sorry, we don't have screen shareability on Instagram. We should. It's lame that we don't. But I'm gonna narrate this, and I'll be able to share it on Facebook and YouTube. So Juan, who works on my marketing team, he's from Venezuela, and he's got a buddy that lives in Florida. Okay, who's a painter, a street artist, and he's doing really well. Juan pings me yesterday. It's like, dude, check out my buddy. Check out his Instagram. Okay, I'm going to share this now because it's going to illustrate a story for me. It's going to illustrate exactly what we're talking about. And I look at this guy, okay, and I can see clearly that he's a street artist, right? And he's got some Disney characters going on, and he's got some Andy Warhol pop art style thing, like the Campbell suit, except he's doing Hermes fashion suit, and normal street art type of a style, right? And so as I scroll up, I wonder if this guy's smart enough to pivot. Would he end up doing a pivot? And I'm scrolling through, looking what he's doing, and what do I come upon here?
Oh goodness, I love it.
Explain for Instagram what's on here.
He's got a Bored Ape painting.
What is a Bored Ape?
It's arguably the most popular NFT project right now. Aside from like it's CryptoPunks and the Bored Apes, right? Like Steph Curry, Jimmy Fallon, go down the list. Post Malone, Eminem own these things, right? So he's jumping right on the trend. And he's got a huge canvas there, and it looks like he's standing with the buyer. It looks like he's standing with the buyer.
Is this not a pivot? Is this not a pivot? Is this not a pop art jacking pivot? And now,
I mean, you're scrolling in his Instagram feed, and I'm looking at Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse, and now I just saw a Bored Ape. Total pivot, But exactly, I can tell you right now, I already love this guy. I love because he's thinking the right way. Tell one. Because I love this guy, because I can tell that he's going to be successful because he's thinking the right way. This is what you got to be doing, right? The exact opposite of, I'm going to go, shoot just a bunch of close-ups on flowers, and then I'll do like 100 of those, and then I'll launch my business and let's see what happens, right? Yeah. You might sell nothing. Whereas he just paints a Bored Ape, probably one of the most popular topics right now. He's only got one. It's a great painting. And do you think he's going to sell it? I think he's going to sell it, Yeah. And it looks like he did. And right there, you're more successful with just one painting, than you would be with that whole project that you thought about in your mind about going about it the other way.
So good. So good. So good. All right, we've been ranting for an hour. So let's do our takeaway thoughts. Okay. I'll let you think on it, but I'll go first, sort of summing things up. One, not only do you have the permission to try different styles, okay, but two, every successful artist you've ever heard of, every successful photographer you ever heard of, just naturally knew how to do this, and they did this, right? They did this. No one hits a home run firing just one arrow. No one hits a home run and grows a huge business on the first at bat, right? On the subject material that you loved and that you wanted to do and the creative inspired you. I'm sorry to burst that bubble, but that is just the absolute truth, okay? Number two, get everything out of the way that possibly gets in the way of you getting feedback on the art, okay? On you getting the art in front of somebody's eyeballs. I don't care if you do this digitally or if you do this in person. It's easier in person. And do not let them walk away without seeing whether or not you can make a sale. If they're not willing to take something for on the cheap, okay, and put it on their wall or do something about it, you've got a problem. You've got a problem, right? And three, understand that you're going to be doing this for the rest of your career. The biggest artists don't ever stop. Those are my takeaways if I launched an art business today. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I will agree with your points, and I'll add one other point. And this is sort of like a dagger to the forehead for everybody. The content that you have right now is your biggest limitation. The content that you have right now, your subject matter that you're selling right now, I know for a fact it is your biggest limitation. It's not your talent, okay? It's not your style. It's your content is your biggest limitation right now of your art business, no matter where it's at. Because I know that it's the limit of somebody who is stuck at $100,000 in sales a year. It's their limitation too. So it's already your limitation. Okay. And so when you think of, let that hit you and let that sink in. Because if you turn that over and you start, acting in a way that you know that, and you start doing the things that we were talking about, you're gonna get to, a smoother sailor type of a business faster. Okay. And so if you're starting out, especially, this is extremely important.
Yeah. On that note, thanks for listening. And as always, have a great day.
Thank you, guys.